The first thing you need to understand is that Coconut Grove doesn't feel like most of Miami. If you're coming from Brickell or Miami Beach, you're used to that city vibe. Skyscrapers, Uber Eats at 2 a.m., and that constant noise. The Grove, on the other hand, it's a village. It feels slower, it feels greener, and it feels a little more personal. People walk to coffee, they know their neighbors, the trees are everywhere, and I don't mean polite little landscape trees. I mean the massive, ancient banyan trees that cover the entire street and block out the sun. And here's the biggest lifestyle hack that locals use, the golf cart. We have a service in Florida called the Freebie. Coconut Grove happens to be one of the few neighborhoods to have an electric 5-seater golf cart as a transportation method. The best part about this service is that it picks you up and drops you off anywhere in Coconut Grove for free. A hack that really only locals know and love. And yes, I am a constant Freebie user myself. Honestly, it's saved me so many times. So many times where I've gone to a restaurant and I didn't know how I was gonna get back. That Freebie saved me for sure. But those who are fully settled in here probably have already invested in their own golf cart. If you drive by a school pickup line here, you will see 7 to 8 golf carts lined up in a row. And it's not a flex, it's just how people live in this neighborhood. This changes your entire day. When you live here, you don't drive to dinner at a mall. You don't drive to the fresh market. You take the golf cart. It turns the neighborhood into a resort. You stop thinking about parking and you start thinking about living. For a lot of people, that's the dream. Quick context, because this actually matters. Coconut Grove is Miami's oldest neighborhood. It sits on Biscayne Bay, just south of Brickell and east of Coral Gables. People love it for 3 reasons: the tree canopy, the history, and the fact that it still feels like a neighborhood, and it's not just a zip code. But here's what the online maps miss. The Grove is not just one vibe throughout. It actually has 2 personalities living under one same name. And it's more like you cross the village area, usually right around Main Highway or 27th Ave, and suddenly you feel the shift. You can visually notice the changes in the architecture, the lifestyle, and most importantly, the landscape. But I have to add one more update here. The last 2 years, I've seen a differentiating factor diminish slightly. Before, the distinction and the split between the North and the Grove was very strict. But I think it's really important to note that I've seen a big shift in the last 2 years alone. Why? My theory is that there has been so much new construction in North Coconut Grove. Now, if you find a comparable lot size in the North with a new build, the lines are starting to blur. But the vibe in the North Grove and the South is still totally different. Let's dive into North Coconut Grove first. This is the side closest to Brickell, downtown, and the Rickenbacker Causeway, which is most commonly known by the locals as the bridge connecting the Grove to Key Biscayne. I call this the city side. This feels like the natural next step for someone graduating from that condo life. It's for the person who is tired of the elevators and the valet parking, but isn't ready to feel like they live in the suburbs. They want the trees, but they also want to be at a dinner reservation in Brickell in 12 minutes. You're paying for speed. You hop on South Bayshore Drive and you hit I-95 in just a few minutes. If you travel for work or work downtown, the logistics advantage is huge. Now, the housing reality. You'll see a lot of newer construction here. Because the land is so valuable and close to the water, developers come in heavy. You're gonna see the clean lines, the glass, the modern architecture, often sitting right next door to that older Spanish-style home. This is also where you will find the condos along the bay. Famous buildings like Park Grove, Grove at Grand Bay, and Mr. C's, and our famous new The Four Seasons. If you want a doorman and a gym and the view of the sailboats without the yard work, this pocket has your name all over it, and we can call it perfect in between. But as all good things have their flaws, we have to talk about the trade-offs. Here, you're trading square footage for time. In North Grove, unless you're spending 8 figures on the water, you're usually trading the yard space for the location. You lose the big lawn, but you gain an hour of your life back every single day by not sitting in traffic, which honestly might be more of a green flag for you than a red one. Just depends on your lifestyle preference. Now let's go South Coconut Grove, moving toward Coral Gables. The second you cross over, the energy totally shifts. The streets get twistier, the banyan trees get massive, like covering the entire street massive, and there's way less through traffic. Let's compare vibes. I call the North Grove the city side, and well, I call the South Grove the sanctuary. Very different, I know. This side feels hidden, it's quieter, and a lot more residential. This is where people stop cutting through because there's just nowhere to rush to. But here's the detail that most people miss until they move in: the sidewalks, or rather, the lack of them. You'll see the kids riding bikes on the street because often there are no sidewalks. The trees are so old and the roots are so big that the street just takes over. It feels tucked away, almost like a secret garden, but you'll need to know that you're sharing the road with nature. When it comes to the housing reality, think the forever home. This side is dominated by single-family homes, and well, you guessed it, you usually get more land. We're talking quarter-acre lots, sometimes even the half-acre. You have room for the pool, the guest cottage, the summer kitchen, the entire beautiful setup. And let's not forget the pricing truth. It's still a premium. This is still Coconut Grove after all, but you generally get more dirt for your dollar than in the north. But there is a catch, that being the inventory. Families move into South Coconut Grove for the schools like Ransom, Carrollton, and they don't leave. They hold these houses for 20 to 30 years. So when a good one comes up, sometimes it can be a real bidding war. Okay, by now you've either made up your mind or you're still on the fence. But don't worry, I'm gonna tell you how you can actually make the right decision. It's not spreadsheets and it's not endlessly scrolling through photos. You need to actually feel it. And I've turned that feeling process into something that I call the weekend test. Step 1, the coffee run. Saturday morning, go get coffee in North Coconut Grove. Walk down Tiger Tail. Listen to the ambient noise. Ask yourself, does it feel energizing or does it feel just a little too busy for your Saturday? Step 2, the Sunday drive. Then drive through South Coconut Grove. Turn off your GPS. Wind through the streets near the campong. Does this quiet feel peaceful and safe, or does it feel isolating? Some people find the tree canopy can be comforting. Others find it to be way too dark, but you don't know until you drive it. Step 3, and the most important, the school run. Time the commute. Let's say Tuesday morning at 7:45 a.m. Drive from South Grove to your office or to your kid's school. Because remember, if you live deep in the South, getting out to US 1 is about a 15-minute mission. That drive will tell you the truth that no one is listing on their description. Here is the bottom line. North Grove gives you the speed and the city access. South Grove gives you the space and the seclusion. Both can give you that incredible Coconut Grove jungle feel, but they serve very different lives. When you buy a home in Coconut Grove, you are paying a premium. We all know that, but you aren't just paying for the walls and the roof. You're paying for what is outside your front door, which is actually the most exciting part. Most people think the Grove is just a marina and a shopping mall, but if you actually live here, the neighborhood is divided into distinct lifestyle pockets. There is a pocket for the cool kids, there's a pocket for the power lunches, and there's a pocket for the boaters. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the specific streets and spots that drive the demand in this neighborhood. I'm going to be using the local map to show you exactly where you'll be spending your money, your weekends, and your Tuesday nights. Now let's get into it. First, we have to talk about Fuller Street. If you bought a house walking distance to this street 5 years ago, you are a genius because this alleyway has exploded. It is largely thanks to one powerhouse team, Ariete Hospitality Group, led by Chef Michael Beltran. They have basically built a culinary empire right here on this corner. And here is a fun fact about the Grove. Unlike the rest of Miami, the neighborhood isn't dominated by big national chain restaurants. It's defined by local families and chef owners. When you eat here, the owner is often in the kitchen. Anyways, back to the Ariete Empire. First, you'll find the flagship restaurant, Ariete. This is the crown jewel. It is held as a Michelin star for 3 years running. Chef Beltran is basically redefining Cuban cuisine here, merging old Latin traditions with high-level French technique. It is a restaurant that could only have been born in Miami. Then, right nearby, you have Chug's Diner. This is a Michelin bib gourmand, and the vibe is absolutely perfect. If an American diner and a Cuban cafeteria had a baby, that would be Chug's. It's comfort food, but it's elevated. And yes, that cast iron pancake is all worth the hype. Right next door, the same team just opened Chuggy's. This is pure 90s nostalgia. It's a burger joint inspired by the chef's childhood in Miami. And get this, in the neighborhood where everything is expensive, they have $8 burgers and $4 beers. They serve crispy fries, soft serve ice cream, and for the parents, they have the happiest of meals for the kids. It is the ultimate casual Tuesday night spot. The spot next door to Chuggy's takes you to Drinking Pig Barbecue. This is run by Chef Raheem Sealy, formerly of KYU. He brings that Austin-style barbecue to Miami, but with a Caribbean twist. We're talking brisket, ribs, cornbread, and it sells out fast, so make sure they have it in stock. And finally, hidden in the same pocket, you'll have May's Room. If you want a cocktail, you sneak in here. Yes, it's your very own Coconut Grove speakeasy. And the lines are long, and you might not get in, so just be prepared for that. You aren't going to find a big neon sign inviting you in. You have to look for the door. It's designed to be hidden. Inside, it's moody, it's dark, and it's where you want to go if you want to feel like a local who knows the secret spots. It shifts from a refined after-work spot to a moody cocktail den at night. It makes you feel like you aren't in Miami anymore, like if you've escaped somewhere without actually traveling out of the city. Why does this matter? Because if you live within 5 blocks of Fuller Street, you essentially have a luxury food hall as your second living room. Budget permitting, you're basically never gonna have to cook. Something that sounds good in my book. I'm going to walk you through the 5 hard questions that I ask every single private client. If you answer these honestly, the answer will be crystal clear. Now, let's stress test your move. Question number 1, do you want to walk to dinner or do you want a big backyard? Because in the Grove, you usually have to pick one of those. The Grove forces a trade-off early. If you want true walkability, meaning you can walk to Coco Walk, you can walk to Siddell's and the Fresh Market in under 10 minutes, you are looking for North Coconut Grove. The reality check, that usually means smaller lots, tighter parking, and neighbors who are right there. If you want the half-acre lot, the long driveway, and the privacy where you can't see your neighbor's pool, you are likely going to be in South Coconut Grove. And guess what? You are driving to get coffee and you are driving to the pharmacy. It's a short drive, but yes, you aren't necessarily stumbling home from the bar. If walkability is a non-negotiable for you, then the North Grove fits. If space and privacy matter, the South Grove fits. And if you want a deep dive on exactly where that dividing line is, make sure you watch my North versus South Coconut Grove video where I can break down the specific streets. If you're thinking about moving to Coconut Grove with kids, the schools here might completely change how you look at this neighborhood. Fun fact, the public schools in and around the Grove average roughly 79% math proficiency and 84% reading proficiency. The Florida statewide average is only 52%. So no, that's not normal. This small pocket of Miami quietly gives families access to elite private schools, top-performing public schools, Montessori programs, Catholic options, and strong charter school choices, all within just a few minutes of each other. And here's what makes Coconut Grove different from a lot of other family neighborhoods in South Florida. This is one of the few places where you can actually build a school plan over time, not just pick one school and hope that it works out. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the full Coconut Grove school ecosystem, from early childhood all the way through high school. including which schools are exceptional, which ones are underrated, and which realities most agents will never tell you before you buy. Before we get into the individual schools, here's the first thing to understand. Coconut Grove is small geographically, but incredibly dense when it comes to education options. Within about a 10-minute drive, families here can choose between a private prep school, Montessori programs, Catholic schools, public magnets, charter options, and strong neighborhood public schools. And in some parts of the Grove, your child can actually walk or bike to school, which is a huge lifestyle shift for families moving from car-dependent suburbs. That's one of the main reasons so many buyers with young kids choose the Grove over Brickell, downtown, and even some parts of Coral Gables. So let's walk through this the same way parents think about it. Elementary years, middle school years, then of course high school. Let's start with the early years. One of the most interesting schools in the Grove is Coconut Grove Montessori School. This was the first Montessori school in South Florida to offer a program serving infants through elementary, and it's become a real hidden gem for families who believe in child-led, curiosity-driven learning. The classrooms can be bilingual, English and Spanish, English and French, or English only, and the school combines classic Montessori philosophy with the enrichment like robotics, yoga, and physical education. Tuition here is roughly around $25,000 a year, so it sits well below the cost of top prep schools, but it still attracts very intentional families. And this is important for relocating buyers to understand. For a lot of Grove families, Montessori is not the final destination, it's the launchpad. It's often part of a longer school pipeline that can lead into schools like Carrollton, Ransom, St. Stephen's, or strong public options later on. So if you have a toddler or young child, the Grove gives you the flexibility to start with a nurturing early learning environment without locking yourself into a path forever. There's one more private elementary school in the Grove that people relocating from places like New York, Chicago, or LA really need to know about, and that's St. Stephen's Episcopal Day School. This school sits right on Main Highway in the heart of the village, and honestly, it may be the most Coconut Grove school of them all. It serves about 307 students from pre-K to 5th grade with a 7-to-1 student-teacher ratio. Tuition is around $34,500 a year, which is still significant, but compared to schools like Carrollton and Ransom, many families actually see it as a relative value. What makes St. Stephen's so compelling is honestly the feel. It has the rare combination of high standards, strong community, faith-rooted identity, and genuine warmth. I've seen parents compare it to top elementary schools in Manhattan, and that's a very specific kind of compliment that relocating buyers immediately understand. It's also one of the few schools in Miami where the walkability factor is part of the appeal. For some families living in the village, this can feel much more like an old school neighborhood lifestyle than a typical South Florida school commute. The one thing to know is admissions. Parishioners and siblings of the current students get preference. So, if St. Stephen's is on your radar, it helps to start building that relationship really early. Now, if you want a private school option in the Grove, but the $35,000 to $50,000 range feels unrealistic, the school you need to know about is St. Hugh Catholic School. St. Hugh serves pre-K through 8th grade, and tuition is roughly about $10,690 per year, making it the most affordable private school option in the immediate Grove area. It has about 289 students, a more traditional student-teacher setup, and a very real parish-centered community feel. This is a strong fit for families who want faith, structure, and value-driven education without stepping into the ultra-expensive prep school tier. So for many buyers, St. Hugh becomes the answer to this question. How do we stay in Coconut Grove, keep our private school preference, but not spend $50,000 a year per child? That's where St. Hugh becomes extremely relevant. And personally, this is actually the church I go for Mass every single day. So I've seen it firsthand, the kind of community that comes with it. It's really a special place. Now, let's talk public schools because this is where Coconut Grove really starts to surprise people. Coconut Grove Elementary is one of the strongest arguments for buying in this neighborhood. This is a public school serving pre-K through 5th grade, and the academic results are excellent. About 83% of students score proficient or above in math and 85 in reading. That is dramatically above the district and state averages. So if you're moving to the Grove and your home is zoned for Coconut Grove Elementary, that is not just a school assignment, it is a real estate asset. Some families absolutely pay a premium to be in the zone, and when you understand the performance, it makes sense. For buyers who want a neighborhood school feel without a private school tuition bill, this is one of the best public deals in all of Miami. And just to throw a bit of a curveball, there's a school that doesn't always come up on the Coconut Grove list, and it absolutely should, St. Philip's Episcopal School. It's just outside of the Grove on Andalusia Avenue in Coral Gables, but a lot of Coconut Grove families actually choose this school. It's smaller, about 180 students, pre-K through 5th grade, with a really strong community feel. Tuition is around $35,000 a year, so it sits right between some of the more affordable and more premium private schools. And I'll say this, I know families personally who have sent their kids there, including Riley's kids, and the loyalty to this school is real. It's one of those places where once families find it, they tend to stay. It's faith-based, intimate, and academically very strong. Just a really solid option that a lot of people moving to the Grove might skip over. Another public elementary option in this area is George W. Carver Elementary. This school tends to get less attention than the middle school right next door, but it's actually a solid option academically with strong performance in both math and reading. If you're buying close to Douglas Road or that part of the Grove, it's definitely worth checking what you're zoned here for. It's not talked about as much, but for the right location and family, it can be a really good public school option. Francis S. Tucker K-8 serves part of the historic Black and Latino Grove community and has a school-wide environmental science magnet program, including dedicated science labs. But academically, the numbers are lower than the other public schools we've talked about. Math proficiency is about 47%, and the reading proficiency is about 42%. So, if academic performance is your top filter, this is something you need to understand before you buy a home. Some choose to apply to magnet programs, some choose charter schools, some go private. Some are comfortable with Tucker's mission and community and decide it's the right fit anyway. But what you do not want is to find this out after you close. That is exactly why school-level guidance matters so much in a move like this. Now, let's dive into middle school. When families research middle school options in and around Coconut Grove, George Washington Carver Middle will definitely come up. This school is a public magnet serving grades 6 through 8. We're talking roughly 87% proficiency in math and 91% in reading. That's not just good for a public school, that is exceptional. It ranks in the top tier of Florida middle schools, offers gifted programming and advanced coursework. But this is also a school where I always tell families, don't just read the scores online. Visit the campus, drive the area, talk to the parents, and decide for yourself what feels right. Some families feel great about it, others decide to go in a different direction. And now, let's talk about one more school, Matter Grove Academy. This is a tuition-free public charter school serving K through 8th. Matter Grove has been an A-rated for 6 consecutive years, carries a high-performance charter designation, and serves more than 1,200 students. Academically, the numbers are strong, roughly from 75% math proficiency and 65% reading proficiency, both above the state average. It also offers gifted programming and Project Lead the Way, which gives it a real STEM identity. The trade-off? The student-teacher ratio is a little higher than some of the other options, and there is usually a wait list. I always recommend doing your own research, visiting, and seeing if it's the right fit for your family. For some families, it works really well. For others, they end up choosing a different path. Now let's move into the high school because this is where Coconut Grove really separates itself. The crown jewel is Ransom Everglades. This is the school that puts Coconut Grove on the national and really international education map. Ransom serves grades 6 through 12. It has about 1,100 students, a 9-to-1 student-teacher ratio, and an all-in yearly cost that lands around $52,000. Its reputation is elite. It has been named one of the top 10 private schools in North America, and the academic outcomes are exactly what you would expect from that level of institution. AP results are outstanding. College placement is outstanding. The student body is high performing. The standard is extremely high. But the most important thing for relocating families to understand is this: Ransom is not something you casually look at after you move. The process is extremely competitive, layered, and early. Tours, interviews, testing, application timelines, all of that starts much earlier than most families even realize. So if you're moving to Miami and your child is in 5th or 8th grade, the application window may already be open or closer than you actually think. That is the real urgency with Ransom. If this school is part of your long-term plan, you need to think like a strategist, not just a homebuyer. Right alongside Ransom in terms of prestige is Carrollton School of the Sacred Heart. And well, literally right alongside. They are all right next to each other location-wise. Carrollton is an all-girls Catholic prep school serving pre-K through 12th grade, and it's the only school of its kind in Florida. It has around 811 students and 7-to-1 student-teacher ratio, and the tuition here is about $49,000 a year. What makes Carrollton's especially interesting is that it blends Montessori philosophy in the early years with a serious college prep path later on. That creates a continuity a lot of families really value. Your daughter can start in a more developmental, child-centered environment and still grow into a rigorous academic program without changing schools entirely. Culturally, this school is known for the strong sisterhood, strong formation, and strong college readiness. So if you have daughters and want a faith-based environment that is both nurturing and high ambitious, Carrollton is one of the most distinctive educational paths in all of Miami. A very different private high school path is LaSalle. This school is Catholic. It serves grades 9 through 12. And for many families, it represents a much more accessible private high school option. Tuition is roughly $17,040 a year, which is dramatically less than Ransom or Carrollton. It serves around 890 students. It has an 11-to-1 student-teacher ratio and a 100% graduation rate. It's a very strong athletic culture with 34 sports. This is not the same environment as Ransom, and it's not trying to be. The draw here is the community, the Catholic values, structure, and a less pressure cooker version of private school. So for families who want private schools, but not necessarily want the cost or intensity of the elite prep route, LaSalle is a very respectable path. So when you zoom out, here's what makes Coconut Grove special for families. You have elite private schools, you have top-performing public schools, you have Montessori, you have Catholic options, and you have charter choices. You also have a school pipeline that can evolve as your child grows. That is incredibly rare. The Grove gives families the ability to build a strategy. Maybe private early, public later, maybe public elementary, elite middle, and then private high school. That flexibility is one of the biggest hidden values in this neighborhood. And it's also why buying here is not just about bedrooms, lot size, or walkability. It's about understanding which streets, zones, and admission paths align with the kind of education plan that your family actually wants. How does a neighborhood named after trees end up spending more than a century fighting to keep them? In 1989, the Miami Herald ran a brutal line about Coconut Grove. A place named for its trees was losing the battle to the chainsaw. Builders wanted a different kind of green. They wanted the money. And that might be the perfect metaphor for the entire history of Coconut Grove. Because this neighborhood has gone from a frontier settlement before Miami even existed to a millionaire's row, to Miami's hippie capital, to a nightlife district, to a billionaire playground where homes now sell for over $100 million. But beneath all of it, it is one long fight. Can Coconut Grove keep its soul while the world keeps trying to pave it over? And once you see this, you understand why Coconut Grove feels different from the rest of Miami. Long before Miami became Miami, this was a wild stretch of shoreline along Biscayne Bay. The area was home to the Tequesta and later became a stop for sailors because of something incredibly valuable in old South Florida, the fresh water. By the late 1800s, settlers started arriving here. But one group matters more than most people realize: the Bahamian community. Black Bahamian builders, craftsmen, and families helped physically build Coconut Grove from the very beginning. In 1873, Dr. Horace Porter applied for a post office and named the area Coconut Grove, with an A after spotting a couple of coconut palms nearby. So the place literally got its name from the trees. That becomes important later on. By the 1880s, Coconut Grove was becoming a real pioneer village. One of the most important early residents was Ralph Monroe, who built a home here in 1887 called the Barnacle. It still stands today, the oldest home on its original site in Miami-Dade County. That house has survived hurricanes, booms, busts, hippies, billionaires, and it's still there. At the same time, Bahamian builders shaped the Grove with what is now known as the conch houses, designed for heat, storms, and tropical living. That influence still defines part of West Coconut Grove today. Even early residents were building communities, schools, clubs, and civic life. So before Miami was known for towers and flash, Coconut Grove was already something extremely rare: a village under a thick tropical canopy. In the early 1900s, Coconut Grove developed two identities at exactly the same time. Along the bayfront, the wealthy industrialists built massive estates, what became known as Millionaires' Row. The most famous example is Vizcaya, built between 1914 and 1922. Nearby, Plymouth Congregational Church became one of the Grove's most recognized landmarks. And in 1919, Coconut Grove officially became its own town. That's also when the spelling changed from Coconut Grove to Coconut Grove, after David Fairchild said that was the correct spelling of the fruit. But that independence didn't last, because in 1925, the city of Miami came straight for it. In 1925, Miami forced a vote to take over Coconut Grove. The residents voted no. They wanted to stay independent, but sadly, they were outnumbered. And just like that, the Grove lost control of its own future. That same year, more bad news followed. The city built a trash incinerator in West Grove in the Bahamian community. So from that moment on, Coconut Grove had two realities: beauty on one side and burden on the other. Coconut Grove entered the next era through the sky, becoming part of aviation history. At Dinner Key, Pan American Airways launched seaplanes across the world. And here's the crazy part: that terminal building still exists today, but we now know it as the Miami City Hall. At the same time, Coconut Grove was becoming a cultural magnet. Writers and artists passed through or lived nearby. And over time, the Grove developed a reputation as a quieter, more eccentric, more literary part of Miami. Then came one of the Grove's most important cultural landmarks, the Coconut Grove Playhouse. It opened in 1956, and from that point on, the Grove wasn't just wealthy, it was now interesting. And then it got a lot stronger. By the 1960s, Coconut Grove became the counterculture capital of Miami. Peacock Park filled with barefoot musicians, artists, and the free spirits. People camped in the parks, played music in the streets, and created a completely different kind of Miami lifestyle. Business owners loved the energy and hated the chaos. And this wasn't just local. Coconut Grove was connected to a national counterculture movement. One of the people orbiting this scene was Michael Lang, who would later become famous as one of the organizers of Woodstock. And then there's maybe the craziest detail of all. There was an experimental lab in Coconut Grove where a scientist connected to the LSD movement. He was running tests on dolphins in the middle of the neighborhood. You can't make that up. And then came one of the most infamous moments in Coconut Grove history, the Doors at Dinner Key Auditorium in 1969. Jim Morrison was led off stage mid-show after allegedly exposing himself. That was Coconut Grove in the 1960s. Wild, creative, completely unpredictable, but it didn't last because no bohemian paradise stays frozen forever. Now, let's talk about something most people totally underestimate. In Coconut Grove, the street is not just the address, it's a value driver. You can have two homes that look almost identical on paper, same square footage, same bedroom count, and same zip code, but one is on a quiet, tree-lined street where you feel completely removed from the city, and the other is on a cut-through street with traffic during school pickup and rush hour. Those are not the same home. They will not sell for the same price, and if you try to price them the same, the market will let you know. This plays out across the Grove. North Grove carries a high premium because of the proximity to Brickell and downtown. Homes closer to the village carry a premium because of the walkability and the lifestyle. Waterfront versus non-waterfront is a completely different buyer and a completely different conversation. And then there is the flood zone. Nearly half of the properties in Coconut Grove carry a significant flood risk over the next 30 years. Buyers are not ignoring that. They are looking at elevation, insurance costs, long-term exposure, and they are factoring all of that into what they are willing to pay. A home at $3 million with $60,000 a year in insurance is not the same one with $18,000. And buyers are doing the math. So when I price a home, I am not just looking at what is inside the four walls. I'm looking at everything around it that impacts the buyer's decision. Now let's talk about the numbers. Coconut Grove is what I call supply constrained and price dense. There is limited inventory, especially in the most desirable pockets, and the price points are really high. But that does not mean that you can price without discipline. Homes under $6 million are absorbing in roughly 2.5 months. This is where momentum happens when you price correctly. But in the $3 million to $6 million range, there is about 14 months of supply. That means buyers can have options and they are comparing it to everything. And here is the number I want you to remember. Homes are selling for about 7% below their original list price. That is the market correcting overpricing. And every price reduction costs you something. It costs you time, it costs you momentum, it costs you perception, because once a home sits, buyers start asking, what is wrong with it? The best priced homes create urgency. The overpriced ones create conversations, and the conversations do not always turn into offers. On a $2.7 million home in Coconut Grove, your seller cost in 2026 could easily be $150,000 before you pack a single box. And I'll be honest, that's the moment most sellers stop and say, wait, where is all of that going? And the truth is, most sellers don't find out until it's too late to do anything about it. Because once you factor in your commissions, taxes, concessions, and everything else, your sale price and what you actually walk away with can be a very different number. And I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm saying it because knowing that number before you list is one of the most powerful things you can do as a seller. So in this video, I'm breaking it all down with real numbers so you know exactly what to expect before you list your home. If we haven't met yet, I'm Rebeca Cruz with RealMiami, and I specialize in Coconut Grove and Miami real estate. On this channel, I'll break down what you need to know about buying, selling, and living in Miami with honest, practical advice so that you can make smart decisions before you make expensive ones. And before we get into all the actual seller costs, let's quickly talk about the market you're selling into in 2026, because that changes the math also. in February 2026, the median sales price in Coconut Grove is about $2.7 million. So this is still very much a luxury market. But it is not the same market sellers were in a few years ago. Homes are taking longer to sell, buyers have more negotiating power, and a lot of sellers are still pricing like it was 2021. Those homes sit, the ones that sell are priced in today's reality, and even with a high percentage of cash buyers, people are paying much more closer attention now to insurance, flood risk, maintenance, reserve funding, and yes, even things like radon testing, which we're seeing come up more and more in inspections. So when I talk to sellers in Coconut Grove, I always say this: the goal is not just your sale price, it's what you actually walk away with. That's called your net proceeds. So now that you understand the market you're selling into, let's start with the biggest number most sellers see first: our commissions. Average total commissions in Florida are still around 5.5 to 5.6%. We typically break down to about 3% to the list side and 2.5% to the buyer's agent. So on a $2.7 million sale, the listing side is about $81,000 in compensation and the buyer side is about $67,500. And the total potential commission is $148,500. And let me just say this, that's usually the moment where everything starts to feel real. Because that's not a small number, that's the price of a luxury car just gone at closing. Now here's where things get confusing. You've probably heard after the NAR settlement, sellers don't have to pay the buyer's agent anymore. And technically, that's true. But here's what's actually happening in the market. If you choose not to offer buyer agent compensation, you're asking buyers to come out of pocket for their agent, on top of an already expensive purchase. And in a luxury market where buyers are already stretching, that creates lots of friction. So yes, you have more control now, but strategy matters more than ever. The question isn't, do I have to pay it? It's, what does it cost me if I don't do it? Now let's talk about the tax Miami-Dade adds on top of that, and why condo sellers get a very specific surprise here. Single family homes pay about 0.60 per $100. That's 0.6%. So on a $2.7 million home, that's $16,200. But for condos, they pay 1.05 per 100 or 1.05%. So the tax on that same $2.7 million condo is now $28,350. That's over $12,000 more for the same price point. And I've seen this catch sellers completely off guard. Larry Page just spent $188 million in one neighborhood in Miami. Not a portfolio spread across the city. One neighborhood, one man, $188 million. He started with a 4.5-acre waterfront compound on Biscayne Bay, which is worth $101.5 million. Then a 17,000 square foot estate on Monroe Drive, another $71.9 million. Then a third property on Devon Road for nearly $15 million, all in Coconut Grove. And he's not alone. The list just keeps growing. Ken Griffin, George Moss, Mark Zuckerberg, who just bought for $170 million on Indian Creek, not far from here. In 2018, exactly one home sold for over $30 million in all of Miami-Dade County. By 2025, that number was 19. That's an 1,800% increase in 7 years. So if you own a home in Coconut Grove right now, your neighborhood just became one of the most desirable addresses on the planet for people who can literally live anywhere. And I want to talk to you about what that actually means. It's not just the number on your Zillow's estimate, the full picture, because there are two very different stories happening here at the same time. And understanding both of them is what separates the smart decision from an uninformed one. Let's start with the question most people don't ask. Why Coconut Grove specifically? These are people with unlimited options. They could buy in Aspen, in the Hamptons, in Malibu, on the French Riviera, but they're choosing here. Why? Part of it's financial. California's proposed wealth tax is a 5% annual levy on residents worth over $1 billion, designed to retroactively accelerate a migration out of the West Coast that was already underway. Florida has no state income tax, no wealth tax, and a political environment that's been actively welcoming to capital at this scale. But that doesn't explain why the Grove specifically, because plenty of other Florida neighborhoods don't have this. What the Grove offers that almost nowhere else can replicate is this. It feels like a real place. Real privacy, not manufactured exclusivity, but actual winding streets, dense tree canopy, properties that don't invite foot traffic, real water access, Biscayne Bay, and a marina culture that is genuine, not decorative. A walkable village with history, with restaurants that have been there for decades, with a community that existed long before the money arrived. And one local broker put it this way: Coconut Grove is a neighborhood where a billionaire can walk their dog under a canopy of oaks without the paparazzi-fueled chaos of Miami Beach. That's the product, and there's a limited supply of it. When Ken Griffin paid $106.9 million for this bayfront compound 4 years ago, his neighbors didn't just watch, they took notes. One of them recently listed their estate asking $110 million, specifically trying to beat Griffin's price. That's how benchmarking setting works. One trade recalibrates what the entire neighborhood is worth. Another luxury broker noted, a trade like this recalibrates the entire neighborhood as it hits $7,000 per square foot. We've seen this in Miami Beach, Bal Harbour, Golden Beach, and now we're seeing it in Coconut Grove. That quote matters because it's not speculation, it's a pattern that has already played out in multiple Miami submarkets, and now it's here. Now let's talk about what this means for you if you own a property here in Coconut Grove, because the numbers are pretty significant. The median single-family home sale price in Coconut Grove reached $2.35 million in Q4 of 2025. In the same period in 2019, just 6 years ago, that median was $995,000. That's more than double in 6 years. And the luxury condo level, that momentum hasn't slowed down at all. In Q2 of 2025, Coconut Grove and Coral Gables combined posted luxury condo sales volume up 9% year over year. Price per square foot up 5% to $855. And days on markets are down 8% to just 53 days. The fastest selling of all Miami neighborhoods in that period.